At the dawn of time in 2016, the original Monster Hunter stories released for the Nintendo 3DS in Japan. This spin-off offered Monster Hunter's first foray into the JRPG scene with a heavier focus on narrative and exploration than your typical Monster Hunter fare. In addition, strategic turn-based battles replaced the tried-and-true real-time combat this series is known for. Instead of simply hunting majestic monsters and turning them into pants, you could now befriend and battle with the monsters, and still wear them as pants. But at the time, with the Switch releasing mere months away and the 3DS already one screen in the grave, Monster Hunter stories didn't receive nearly as much attention as it deserved, despite being well received by the few who took the plunge. Well, fast forwarding 5 years, the Switch is now at the height of its popularity, and this ambitious spin-off title is finally getting a second chance at success in the form of Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin. So how does Stories 2 stack up to other JRPGs? And will fans of traditional Monster Hunter find something to like here? Put on your ears and let's find out. To start off, Monster Hunter Stories 2 is a completely new tale with a new cast of characters separate from the first game, barring a few cameos here and there. Meaning, even if you didn't play the 3DS title, it's fine to jump straight in here. Before starting the game, you'll have to first create your writer. Character creation isn't super robust, but there were at least enough options to make my character look like he got lost on the way to the next Mother game. You play as an up-and-coming monster rider from Makala Village, whose claim to fame is being the grandchild of a legendary monster rider known as Red. And no, not that Red. If you're new to the series, a monster rider is basically the polar opposite of a monster hunter, in that they only fight monsters in self-defense, instead preferring to befriend and tame monsters using magical devices known as kinship stones to keep the ecosystem in balance. As you can imagine, these differing ideals cause a lot of conflict between hunters and riders throughout the game. After setting out on your journey, you soon come across a young Wyverian girl named Enna, who informs you that all the Rathalos are starting to disappear across the world, and some monsters are becoming enraged with spooky dark energy. Enna, having become close friends with your grandpa before he passed away, entrusts you with a special Rathalos egg, hoping you will help solve this mysterious mystery, thus bringing balance back to the world. And being a silent protagonist, you have no choice but to go along with it. The journey is a long one, full of beautiful open areas to explore, quaint towns, and wacky characters to meet. I did enjoy the dynamic of having to raise a possibly apocalyptic Rathalos, but my favorite part was everyone trying to convince me that this kid looks like a legendary hero.
You have your grandpa's determined eyes.
Honestly, the story wasn't my favorite. It managed to stay interesting enough to keep me invested, but never seemed to get any deeper than your typical Saturday morning cartoon, cliches and all. Character designs are generally pretty cool, and they did a good job of keeping personalities distinct with such a large cast. English voice acting is decent as well, noticeably better than the mainline Monster Hunter games. The dialogue, however, left a lot to be desired, often feeling like I'm watching Dora the Explorer visits Monster Hunter World. But this is mainly the fault of one character. One returning character who single-handedly, or should I say single-pawedly, made every scene he was in 100% worse. And yes, he's in most of them. Brace your ears, this is Naviru.
If you've really never heard of donuts, how come you don't go nuts?
His face says it all. Forget all those creatures trying to kill you. This thing is the true monster. Always stating the obvious, repeating information, making grown-worthy jokes, repeating information, and that's not even mentioning the non-stop cat puns. He's like me, but somehow more annoying. And because your character went to the same language school as Link, Naviru is always around to put words in your mouth, one horrible spoonful at a time. Well, enough about that. Let's talk about one of the game's biggest strengths, presentation. Wow, this is one of the prettiest games on the Switch hands down, sitting right up there with Nintendo's first-party titles. Environments are lush and full of personality, monster designs are finely detailed, and the cutscenes are just beautiful, feeling almost like a 3D anime film at times. Sound design is ear candy as well, with relaxing environmental sounds injecting an extra layer of life into each area, along with a musical score that regularly caught my attention. After arriving at a new locale, I would often find myself slowly meandering around, soaking in the sights and sounds. Although maybe it looks a little too good, because the frame rate is noticeably choppy across the board. It's not quite Korok Forest bad, it's more like a Korok bush? Even slower moments like checking out towns struggled to keep things steady. Now, did this Wings of Ruin my experience? No, not really, but it was definitely a mild distraction throughout the game, especially during cutscenes with a lot going on. I'm sure it looks great on PC, and who knows, maybe a patch is already in the works. On the bright side, nothing in Stories 2 requires quick reflexes, so poor frame rate isn't a huge deal. On that note, let's talk about gameplay. Long story short, it does an amazing job of converting what's fun about mainline Monster Hunter games into a JRPG setting, and that's coming from someone who rarely enjoys turn-based mechanics. There's two main elements to the game: battles and exploring the field. I'll go over battles first. Much to my relief, there are no random encounters here. Instead, you'll find monsters roaming the wilds, with battles initiating upon clipping through their bodies. Like the first game, Monster Hunter Stories 2 features a turn-based battle system with a focus on strategically utilizing different attack types and monsters. Actually, I should stop calling them monsters, because Monster Hunter Stories has its own term for friendly monsters, and it might be the worst thing I've ever heard. Monsties. Why does it sound like a mix of monster and pastries? Anyway, you can assemble a team of 6 Pokemonsties and swap between them on the fly during a fight. Every attack, whether used by you or a Monstie, is assigned a type, either power, speed, or technical, with each type being strong or weak against another type. Similar to the weapons triangle from Fire Emblem, or rock, paper, scissors from that kid at recess. The player character can pick their attack type freely, while Monsties and monsters generally stick to one type at a time. Many big monsters will even alternate types throughout a fight, meaning learning patterns and picking the right Monstie for the right situation is crucial. Monsters will automatically target a member of your team each turn, initiating a head-to-head. During these, picking the correct attack type does extra damage and even cancels out the enemy's attack, while picking the wrong type does the same to you. And by picking the right type simultaneously with your Monstie, you can rack up even more damage. Being successful in these head-to-heads has tons of benefits, like greatly raising your kinship gauge, allowing you or your monsteroos to use flashy skills. Since skills are the only manual control you have over your Monsties, it's necessary to spend kinship points wisely to maximize damage. However, by not using skills, you can charge the gauge to its max, allowing you to ride your Monstie, instantly healing you both, and permitting the use of powerful kinship moves specific to each creature. Not only are these helpful, they're also just a lot of fun to watch, and definitely a highlight of the game for me. I know this is a ton of information, but don't worry, there's more. Like I mentioned, the battle system also draws from traditional Monster Hunter in some cool ways, like weapon types. Whether you're using great swords, hammers, bows, or anything in between, each weapon has its own quirks and skills. Gun lances, for instance, require shells to use explosive attacks, while bows sometimes need to be charged and are effective at inflicting status effects. Attack animations are fluid and dynamic, with most being easily recognizable for fans of the mainline series. Everyone's sure to have their favorite weapon, but the game heavily encourages you to change things up with its weapon weakness mechanic. There are 3 basic weapon categories: slash, blunt, and pierce. When fighting big monsters, you can manually target which part of their body to attack, with each part being weak to one type. So, for instance, if you want to break the legs of this Arzuros, it's best to use something blunt, like a hammer. Wait, I thought the riders were supposed to be the peaceful ones. Either way, I really like the weapon and attack type systems because they encourage you to learn each monster individually rather than sliding into autopilot. Breaks not only stop monsters from using certain moves, but also increase the chance of receiving certain monster parts, which in turn can be used to make better weapons and armor. And as you would expect from a Monster Hunter game, there's some hot fashion to be had. For better or worse, gear customization is significantly streamlined compared to the mainline series, with most of the technical stuff being tied to Monstie raising. The amount of variables in raising a good Monstie can be daunting at first, but it mainly boils down to 2 things: luck and skills. Like Liam Neeson, each Monstie is born with a very particular set of skills and stats, so getting a good baseline monster is a matter of luck. But by using a feature called the Rite of Channeling, you're able to channel one monster into another, thus passing on a skill of your choosing at the cost of losing the source monster. Where does the monster go? I'll tell you when you're older. Similar to Pokemon, you don't really need to go that hard into skill and stat optimization when playing casually. It's mainly there for those who enjoy the process. But don't worry, the game can go pretty hard if you're seeking a challenge. So, where do you get new Monsties from anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. You get them by stealing. Forget taking candy from a baby, just take the baby. All across the map, there are randomly generated monster dens to find, like mini dungeons of sorts. You enter one, find a monster nest, and straight up steal their eggs. That'll teach you to sleep, you dumb Ludroth. Afterwards, you take the stolen eggs back to a monster farm to hatch your new monstie, who may or may not be injected into another monster later, depending on its usefulness. Are we sure riders aren't the villains? While the monster you get from a den is normally random, there is a way to control this. When battling a monster in the overworld, there is a small chance it will run away before dying. If the monster is low on HP and you throw a paintball at it, the retreat chance increases dramatically. If a monster has retreated, a new den appears on the overworld with your selected monster inside, ripe for abducting. Finding the monsters you want isn't the only reason to explore the world though. There's a whole host of other things to find. Treasure chests, royal monster challenges, natural resources, and Everdens, just to name a few, with the latter being the only way to get your hands on bottle caps, a special type of currency used to buy rare goods and farm upgrades. Who knew Monster Hunter and Fallout take place in the same universe? One of the coolest parts of the Stories games is Traversal. All of those monsties in your pocket aren't just for battling, they're also the best way to get around. Some are more functional than others, but sometimes you just want to make a statement and riding a T-Rex is the only way to do it. On top of different running speeds and animations, each monstie comes equipped with 1 or 2 field skills. These let you do all sorts of things depending on the monster, like jump, break boulders, swim, and even turn invisible. Having a good diversity of monsties with you is important to get the most out of exploration, and finally hunting down that one skill you need feels really satisfying. In a lot of ways, this is like the Pokemon game I always wanted, minus the Pokemon. The game's not perfect though. Aside from the mediocre dialogue and frame rate issues, there's a few smaller problems I had. First, the camera is, to put things bluntly, a buttery mess. It just feels horrible to control and gives you no nuance over its rotation speed. It's either moving at full speed or not at all. My second problem is gameplay variety. Aside from traveling and fighting, which are both fine, there isn't much diversity to the story quests. I would have loved to maybe see some mini games or puzzles to spice things up. Side quests don't offer anything unique either. I do appreciate how easy they are to manage though. Lastly, I'm not a huge fan of the hunting buddy system, allowing you to fight alongside other story characters. While they are a lot of help to have around, they're also not very smart, rarely picking the best moves for the situation. And that's about it for my negatives, but there's one more thing I need to cover before I wrap up. If you need a break from the story companions, you can also team up with another real live human for some cooperative battles locally or online against monsters and other players. If you don't work well with others, a one-on-one versus mode is also available, where players try to score 3 knockouts on their opponent's team with limited resources. Unfortunately, online isn't quite online at the time of this review, so I had to play with AI opponents. But I do like what I'm seeing so far. I can definitely see myself playing the cooperative missions to rake in some extra experience and rewards. Plus, you can send little stickers to each other. Who doesn't love stickers? Oh wait, never mind. So overall, despite a few flaws, Stories 2 still has a ton to like. Beautiful visuals, an exciting turn-based battle system, over 120 unique monsties to collect, and a vast world to explore. Even though I'm not a big JRPG guy, I liked Monster Hunter Stories 2 a lot, and I think it's a great fit for fans of Monster Hunter and JRPGs alike. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Monster Hunter Stories 2 and other things gaming as well. And if you see anything you like in the sidebar, give it a click. Later!